Birding the Palm Beaches is brought to you by Discover the Palm Beaches. Check out thepalmbeaches.tv to learn more. Welcome to this week's episode of Birding the Palm Beaches. This week we're in my hometown of Lake Worth, and we're in the lagoons here looking for a really enigmatic and beautiful bird that has only recently made a reappearance back into this area, the American oyster catcher. Let's go, birding the Palm Beaches. Palm Beach County is one of the largest and most eco-diverse counties in all of Florida, and the Palm Beaches are a paradise of never-ending outdoor activities and things to do and see. An unmatched landscape of first-rate birding, incredible wildlife management areas, year-round fishing, a multitude of water sports, and exceptional beaches make this the best place to experience Florida. From the Everglades to the Atlantic Ocean, you are sure to find things to do that will stoke your passions and make lasting memories. Here in the Palm Beaches, birding and wildlife viewing is a big deal, even bigger than you might imagine. In fact, birding is second only to beach-related activities as a form of outdoor recreation for both visitors and residents. If you're already into birding, you probably know that Florida and Palm Beach County is considered one of the best places in the world for this activity. South Florida is a birding mecca, from the colorful and distinctive natural populations of wading birds to the specialties like Florida scrub jays and red-cockaded woodpeckers, combined with the winter migration of flocks from up north. Palm Beach County is truly a birdwatcher's paradise. This morning I'm here with Benji Stoot from Environmental Resources Management. And guess what? It's Natural Areas Week. We're here in Lake Worth on the Intracoastal, and we're going to head out in the kayaks. Tell us what's so special about Natural Areas Week.
Well, so Natural Areas Week is a celebration of our natural areas here in Palm Beach County, and it's really about just connecting the residents here with the public lands in their backyard. You know, we're firm believers that if we want support for public lands, we've got to connect our communities to them. And that's what Natural Areas Week is all about. So we're packing 23 events into 1 week. We've got things like paddle tours where we're gonna go out and paddle around Snook Island's natural area, but we've got astronomy events, photography workshops, gopher tortoise hikes, hikes with our fire manager. So it's kind of all things natural areas all slammed into 1 week. But we do these events year round as part of our Adventure Awaits series. So any time of year, folks can sign up and come explore with us.
It's a fantastic opportunity to get out there and support the amazing projects that are happening here in the Palm Beaches. And so this morning, what can we expect?
All right, so we're paddling Snook Island's natural area, and this is one of these restoration projects that we've been doing in Lake Worth Lagoon. We're gonna show people all of the restoration of mangrove habitat, oyster reefs, seagrasses, and hopefully, we've already done one tour, and we got to see the American oyster catcher, which has now been breeding after we started restoration for 17 straight years. So we're gonna meet these birds and really learn what makes them so special.
Birds of a feather flock together in the Palm Beaches. Big birds, little birds, pink birds, blue birds. The Palm Beaches is one of the best birding spots in the country. Discover the Palm Beaches and experience one of America's top birding destinations. Birding the Palm Beaches is brought to you by Discover the Palm Beaches. Check out thepalmbeaches.tv to learn more.
That's Big Bertha right there, and she's the biggest tree Mang's ever planted. She's about been in the ground for over 2 years now, and she's really taken root, and she is a beautiful specimen.
All right, Big Bertha. I like the name. Just pulling up here into a restorative mangrove project, and I'm here with Kyle from Mang. Tell us a little bit about Mang and what you guys do.
Sure. So Mang is an environmental apparel brand, and our focus is to restore coastlines. So for every product we sell, we plant a mangrove. So this is one of our first projects, actually. It's called Bryant Park, and it's a southwestern island. And recently we just did a little restoration here, and we're just checking it out, just to make sure our mangs are still kicking.
Cool. So the rocks are creating a barrier for, wave action and all that kind of stuff, right, to allow the mangroves to flourish?
Exactly. So, the whole concept is we have a lot of things that are going on. So a lot of human-based things that are causing boat wakes. So the idea is that they build these riprap walls to protect the mangroves, hold in that sediment, and then give the mangroves an opportunity to grab sediment and build a base layer basically for future growth.
And then once that process has taken place, then it kind of looks after itself, right? Once the mangroves have got their roots structured and everything, they hold that sediment in there, right?
Exactly, yeah. So once we get the mangroves rooted, they begin to build their base, the roots go out, those prop roots begin to drop, and then all of a sudden you have land being built by the mangroves, and then you increase your ecosystem footprint for fish, for birds, for oysters to grow, and all kinds of different things to enjoy the lagoon.
So what species of mangroves do we have on the Snook Islands? Are they red, white, black?
You have a variety of all three.
Okay.
Most of the restoration efforts are all focused on red mangroves. So red mangroves are the first thing that kind of go in the ground, and then blacks and whites are naturally recruiting around them. And then it's just an effort to get, red mangroves tend to grow a little bit slower. So establishing red mangroves, getting a nice footprint, starting to really hold down that shoreline with those different, that mass of prop roots really offers a different type of ecosystem.
Amazing. Yeah. So this has been like your passion for how many years now?
We started Mang back in 2015. It's been a passion of mine since 2013, really forwarding my degree, which is environmental science. I knew I had to give back somehow. I knew I needed a brand that could stand behind a mission, and that mission just so happened to be mangroves. And being able to come out here, see and do physical work, and show our community of people that planting mangroves is just as important as anything else, as picking up trash or doing anything like that. It really builds a community of we can do this, we can restore our coastlines, we can provide a future that's going to be healthy and happy, and provide more ecosystem footprint for our wildlife.
And I guess it's a nice tie into that other passion of yours, which is fishing, right? Tell us how fishing and mangroves are linked together.
Mangroves and fishing go hand in hand. It's like peanut butter and jelly. They just mix, they blend. So the more mangroves we have, the more ecosystem footprint we have for juvenile fish to grow up. And 70% of those marine species utilize our estuary and our mangrove ecosystems as a place to really grow up, get big, and then they can either go offshore, they can stay inshore, and then they can have that choice. But mangroves are the foundation. When the leaves drop into the water, they create what we call detritus. And that detrital breakdown is basically the food web. So it starts there as the base. You have oysters, which are helping to clean and filter water. You have your drums that like to eat oysters and barnacles and stuff. You have redfish that utilize tarpon, snook, bait fish. And I understood from the start that more mangroves just means better fishing. There's nothing like going up a creek into the middle of nowhere and getting into your own oasis where no one's around, and you get to enjoy nature as it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and it's those oysters that are a draw card for the species which we're targeting this week, the American oyster catcher. How was the paddle?
Oh, delightful.
Nice morning, huh?
Heck yeah, man. On the lagoon, sun shining. Doesn't get better. So welcome to Snook Island's natural area. Snook Islands is our largest restoration project within Lake Worth Lagoon. So Lake Worth Lagoon is Palm Beach County's largest estuary. All right, a lot of people when they see the water behind us, they think, oh, that's the Intracoastal. It's not. The Intracoastal, think of that as like I-95 that runs through all of these different natural water bodies. And that's what the Lake Worth Lagoon is. 130 years ago, this was a freshwater lake. There was no connection to the ocean. And in the late 1800s, they dug the first Lake Worth Inlet or Palm Beach Inlet, which created an estuary. And that is where saltwater and freshwater worlds collide. And that's what we have now is this nursery habitat here that fosters juvenile sea turtles, is a home for manatees, and all the juvenile fish that grow up here and then move out offshore to the reefs. So this is an incredibly productive habitat. So what I want to do right now is I want to introduce Kyle Rawson. Kyle is from Mang.
So we've got some juvenile red mangroves. They're about 2 years old, and that's about the right age that we found is the most successful for planting in the lagoon. So I'm going to show you proper planting techniques and then give you the opportunity to plant your first mangs in the ground today.
You guys ready to plant some mangroves?
Yeah.
All right. What do you say? Let's do it.
You guys are more than welcome to pick one mangrove up. If we want a couple of people that want to dig some holes, we got some post hole diggers here. I'm going to bring each of you guys to your locations where I want you to plant. So some of you are going to be planting in the water because we don't have as much space as we need, but we'll make do and we'll make sure we get it done, all right? So the next hole can go right here. Whoever wants to step on up and do that one. And then we're going to keep just coming along the fringe here. We'll do one just about right here. Whoever wants to do the next one here. All right, got that? It's gonna fill in on itself a little bit, so you just have to keep pushing on it. You do it all the time? Yeah, it's my gym workout.
I'm a florist.
Yeah, well, that'll do it. Yeah, there you go. All right, we're gonna come up right in the fringe here, right in between these two nice mangroves. There. If you wanna dig it, have at it. All right, so you got one there. Perfect, now bring that sediment right back on top of it. All right, I'll take you down here. I'll find you a perfect little zone. Keep coming, follow me this way. I'm gonna keep showing everyone where they're gonna plant their mangroves, all right? We're gonna actually do one more right up behind this gentleman up in here. You can kind of pick it. Think about a natural ecosystem. We don't like things in straight lines, so be very random with your planting. Have fun with it. And then just pack that soil down ever so lightly. Make sure that mangrove's standing upright and straight.
Guys, look up into the sky. What do you see? I see balloons floating up in the air. All right. Now, I understand people want to celebrate and everything. I just don't understand balloons, okay? I can't tell you how many of these we find in our natural areas. I have friends who study wading birds in the Everglades, and I can't tell you how many they find when they're doing their helicopter surveys of wading birds. And it might feel like, you know, this grand celebration releasing balloons, but guess what? They come back down, right? And all that is just new microplastic that's gonna end up in the environment and in the gut of some of our favorite animals. So please, please, please help us out. Whenever you can, choose something alternative. Make some festive paper designs, you know, print out some cards, paper ribbons, streamers, goodness, anything except for cellophane balloons.
So we're going to plant a red mangrove, and Kyle's going to demonstrate exactly how that is done. Is there anything special to it?
You know, planting red mangoes is actually very similar to planting trees. You're gonna dig a hole, place it in the hole, make sure it's got the proper depth, and then just fill sediment on top. We don't really need to pack it too tight because we've got this great tide coming in, and that's gonna really settle all the sediment, and it's gonna suction itself into the ground.
The one difference is we don't need to water them afterwards.
That's right. Legit.
Legit.
All right. So we're just gonna make sure you get the proper depth. So we like to make sure that the plug gets about a ½ inch to an inch of sediment on top. That'll help suction it down when that tide comes back in. It's better to plant when the ground is dry versus when you're planting in the water, just because that hole likes to fill in on itself. So we try to always plant at low tide or just at the incoming. Make sure we get proper placement, and it'll give us a better idea for where we can see like where the shorelines get exposed at low tide. So every area is going to be a little bit different, but basically we're just going to bring that soil in right on top, you know, everything that we stuck out of that hole, and we're just going to work it, massage it back in a little bit, and then the tide's going to actually level this out over time. So that sediment will begin to kind of just flush in around, and as this tree drops out all its prop roots, the beautiful thing is it's going to grab sediment. So actually this land is going to be built up rather than you know, washing away.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Very cool.
So just like that, make sure he's vertical to the sky, and we just planted a mangrove just like that.
Awesome. Let's go find some oyster catchers.
Killer.
I mean, this is what it's all about, getting the community invested in restoration. You know, we're a big believer that if we want to further conservation, we've got to connect our communities to our wildlands, and there's no better way than coming out here and recreating on these public lands, engaging with them, and then giving something back, planting a mangrove, picking up some trash. There's no better way to connect to the environment.
There's a gentler side of Florida, just waiting for you to discover it, where America's first resort destination was built and genuine hospitality began. A place with cleaner sands, warmer waters, and fewer crowds. A place different than the rest, one that exceeds, excels, and surpasses all expectation, waiting here just for you. We are the original, the one, the only, the Palm Beaches.
Getting close to birds and wildlife on the water requires stealth. And for me, there's no better way to get close to birds and wildlife on the water than from a kayak. Kayaks can get you into so many different areas: shallow water, canals, sea, ocean, lagoons, creeks like this one that I'm on, where you can get really, really close. The Mirage Drive allows you to do just that on these Hobie kayaks. There's not excessive movement that's going to scare the birds or the wildlife, and you're able to sneak up very quietly, lock onto your subject, and then get those award-winning shots.
Birding the Palm Beaches is brought to you by Discover the Palm Beaches. Check out thepalmbeaches.tv to learn more. Just spotted a pair of oyster catchers together. They flew across towards this side of the lagoon, and now they've flown back again. It looks like they're going towards that sort of sandy beach there.
Yeah, so the oyster catchers flew in behind the bend, and it looks like they're on the back side of this island. And we're gonna troll our way right in here as quiet as we can to see if we can't sneak up on them. When I was growing up, these oyster catchers weren't in the lagoon, you know, and then Palm Beach County started building these islands, and almost instantly, once that habitat was there, the birds started coming back. The spit comes out right here, and I think they might be just on the other side here, because I didn't see them fly past, and we saw them kind of scoot in right in here. And it's just so cool to see when you build an island out and you start to plant, and then you start to see the birds really enjoy the habitat. You know, like it's just a playground, like, you know, for us, you know, it's the same thing to them, you know. This is their playground, and they get to enjoy it every day. And it's just a fascinating thing when you get the opportunity to restore coastlines and see animals enjoy it. Oh yeah.
Beautiful. So we've got a couple of ruddy turnstones here, and we've got one of the oyster catchers here, and it's actually feeding right now. What beautiful birds. God damn it. I think this oyster catcher may be getting ready to nest. This is the time of the year when they will start nesting. Early spring, they'll start doing this amazing courtship display, and they'll walk up next to each other on the bank, and they'll do this piping call to one another, and then they'll nest in a scrape on the ground. Very simple nest, generally higher up, and they love these islands because they're free of predators. They're surrounded 360 degrees by water, and so amazing safety for them. sort of a natural barrier against predators. You can see that one is actually feeding right now on the edge. And what oyster catchers will do is they're very strategic in how they feed. And they'll take that long orange bill and they'll shove it into, look for an oyster that's partially open in the water, and they'll shove that bill right in and they actually snip the muscle that allows the oyster to close. And once they've snipped that muscle, then they can get at the delicious raw bar inside. Look at that, magnificent birds. And that bill is incredibly powerful, and they feed almost entirely on bivalve mollusks. And that bill is so strong that some of them will actually smash through clams and mussels and those kind of mollusks. They'll smash through and then get at the meat inside. Now, there have been cases actually of oyster catchers getting their bills stuck inside an oyster. And it's incredibly dangerous for them, because now the predator now becomes imperiled, because as that tide comes in, the birds can actually drown with their bills caught by the oyster. So very unique feeding strategy. One of the few birds in the world that can actually feed on oysters and clams and bivalve mussels. Awesome. And that is a perfect spot for it to lay its eggs. Nice and elevated, so no risk of it getting flooded. And they like those berms where they can dig out the nest scrape. And they'll have generally about 3 eggs in there. They'll hatch after about 28 days or so, about a month. And then the babies will be born and are what's called semi-precocial at birth, which means that they are able to walk around, they're fully developed, they're fully coordinated. The only difference being that the parents still need to feed them. And then they'll generally fledge within about 2 months. They'll be ready to kind of leave the nest, leave the area. And it's quite interesting because the youngsters will then normally migrate quite far away from the natal area, and then they'll come back to the area in which they were born, sometimes a year or 2 later, and then they'll come back into the same sort of general area. They're really interesting birds, and there's about 12 species of oyster catchers worldwide. We have 2 in the United States. So we've got an entirely black species on the Pacific coast, and then we've got the American oyster catcher here on this coast. There's about several thousand pairs of oyster catchers, so they're not really plentiful because they require this really specific habitat, and they are monogamous, so pairs will generally stick together for several seasons or more, and very site faithful and very faithful to their partners. You'll often find oyster catchers together for that exact reason. Such beautiful birds, and you know, they will hybridize with the Pacific species, with the black oyster catcher, and then you'll get this kind of mix between the black oyster catcher or the melanistic type and then the American oyster catcher, which has got that nice white belly.
Birds of a feather flock together in the Palm Beaches. Big birds, little birds, pink birds, blue birds. The Palm Beaches is one of the best birding spots in the country. Discover the Palm Beaches and experience one of America's top birding destinations.
Birding the Palm Beaches is brought to you by Discover the Palm Beaches. Check out thepalmbeaches.tv to learn more.
If you want to go in quieter, I can pop that trolling motor in too.
Yeah, it might be an idea actually to do that.
And then that way we might not spook them.
We've just pulled up onto the island here and we don't want to disturb these birds, so we're going to go around the back of the island and see if we can get some nice close-ups with the scope and just go around the back side. Look at this. Got the oyster catcher coming into view here. Magnificent looks at this bird. We've got both oyster catchers together now. Very cool. Coming out into the open here. When I first came to Palm Beach County, 12, almost 15 years ago, there were no American oyster catchers here, and just shortly after I arrived, and as they had done the first of these islands here in Lake Worth, that the first pair of American oyster catchers came here. So it's great to show that, you provide the habitat, the birds will come back. Sitting down in a nest. This American oyster catcher has just laid down on what I think is probably a couple of eggs. It's early spring, and this is the time when they'll start to breed. So right up through early spring into summer is when they'll lay those eggs. Babies will hatch. The babies will stay with them until towards the end of summer, and then the parents will sometimes move out of the area, but definitely the kids, the babies that fledge, will move out of the area, go somewhere else for a couple of years, and then they'll often come back to their natal area several years later. They're quite long-lived birds. They've been recorded as living up to their late 20s and sometimes beyond that. So, it's not unusual to find a record of an American oyster catcher that's 30 years plus old. So remarkable birds, and great to see them making a nice comeback here in North America. Amazing. So while we've been filming these American oyster catchers, Kyle has just caught a really nice snook from his boat. We were talking about how mangroves are great attractors of fish. Here's a perfect example, a beautiful snook that he just caught. Oh, that's a nice one. Look at the colors. Fantastic, Kyle.
We're back out here in the Lake Worth Lagoon, and we're here to check on our oyster catcher chicks. So this is something really cool that we've been doing in the lagoon in partnership with FWC for the past few years, and that's banding some of these American oyster catchers so we can learn more about them, learn where they go. Birding is this insanely popular hobby, as you all know, and what that means is we've got birders all over the state, all over the country, that are constantly looking at birds, IDing birds that are banded. In fact, 2 that we banded last year are hanging out over on the west coast in the Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach, Bunch Beach area right now. So it's just so cool to have this kind of citizen science interaction with the restoration that we've been working so hard on here in the lagoon. So this year we've been successfully able to band 4 oyster catcher chicks. And so we're out here a few days after we banded them, making sure all the chicks are doing good, making sure that these ID tags that are on their legs are still visible, everything's kind of doing good. And so what we've seen out here is that our chicks are here, the bands are visible. For those that haven't had experience IDing banded birds, what you're gonna see is a leg tag for these oyster catchers. It's gonna have a color and then a letter and a number. And if you happen to see some of these birds, you can actually submit that information to Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, and they can tell you about where that bird was banded, where it was born. And so it helps us kind of tell the story and put the pieces together and really understand how this population is doing. Such cool work right here in Lake Worth Lagoon.